A very good afternoon to all of you and welcome to the GMOA Academic Cover program. Today's lecture topic is very much different and new to us, which is corporate mindset and wealth management. So we have invited Mr. Dilan Fonseka. Let me introduce Mr. Dilan to the viewers. Mr. Dilan Fonseka represents the health insurance and wealth management category, and he is part of Softlogic Life Insurance PLC, and he is assigned to the Havelock City branch as the Assistant Business Manager. He was a student of St. Joseph's College, Colombo 10. He completed his graduate diploma in business management from BMS Colombo and graduated with distinctions. Dilan completed his MBA from University of Bedfordshire, specialized in marketing. He was previously employed at Holborn Assets Limited as a line manager and as an ExCo member of its Sri Lankan office. Dilan is a visiting lecturer at the Horizon Campus Malabe and the AIB Institute. He is a former director at International Youth Alliance for Peace. He is part of Luminary Learning Solutions as a corporate trainer and also a director consultant for BNI Sri Lanka. So let me warmly welcome Mr. Dilan Fonseka for the academic cover program today.
Greetings to all our doctors in Sri Lanka. Today my topic is on corporate mindset and wealth management. So this topic has two parts. The first part is about the corporate mindset, where we focus on what kind of a mindset our corporates have, what kind of a behavioral pattern corporates have, and what are the challenges and ways of improvements corporates see for their career. I hope this part of that topic will help our doctors to understand how corporates are. Most of them could be your patients, and to understand what kind of a mindset they carry at work. And also the second part is connected to it to see how their wealth is managed, how wealth management is connected to the corporate mindset, how corporates behave, and also how they focus on wealth management. I hope this will help our doctors to understand the connectivity and see how your patients and corporates in general will come to you and have different patterns of thinking, different behaviors, and hope this will help you to understand their wealth management practices and thoughts. Before we start, I'm Dilan Fonseka. I work for Softlogic Life Insurance as a wealth manager and an insurance advisor, and an assistant business manager assigned to Havelock City branch. So Softlogic Life is a public listed company where, from being a smaller player in 2001 when it started as Asian Alliance, we came up to become the second largest life insurance company in the life insurance sector. So the corporate mindset we have in the organization helps us to grow to the next level. It can be the sales force, marketing force, it can be the operational staff, or it can be the back office staff. The mindset is what really help an organization to grow. So I would like to share my experience. I would like to share my perspective as to how this corporate mindset had helped me and the organization and peers and stakeholders in different ways to grow as individuals and as groups. Before we get into the topic, I would like to define what corporate mindset is. Corporate mindset refers to a set of attitudes and practices within a business environment, focused on few things, focused on achieving organizational goals, emphasizing strategic thinking, productivity, and collaboration. This is a general definition, but I found this very holistic because the mindset of achieving goals, mindset of being strategically thinking, mindset of productivity and collaboration are included to this definition. So I do understand doctors as professionals. Yes, there is an organizational goal. As the GMOA, I'm sure there are organizational goals. But corporates have a slightly different mindset and goals where profits are the focus. It's not service oriented like in an organization like GMOA, where companies, publicly listed companies, have to focus on the profit, the triple bottom line, have to focus on all our operations to achieve organizational goals such as profits, such as sustainable growth, such as financial growth in the long run. Yes, so for an organization to do well, starting from the peon, going up until the chief executive officer, having the organizational mindset, having the mindset to achieve goals is very important. Definitely, corporate mindset also consists of emphasizing strategic thinking. If a corporate or a company is focused on non-strategic growth, let's say there's no strategy, it's ad hoc, the CEO or the chairman of the company gives instructions and do not communicate that strategic thinking to organizational employees or stakeholders, corporate mindset will not be successful. They will not achieve their goals. They will not have their objectives, their activities in line to achieve their organizational goals. Of course, then we focus on productivity and collaborations. Productivity. Doctors are often very much masters of productivity and being efficient. In a similar way, organizations want their corporates to be productive. Productivity is a key success factor for corporates to grow. There are certain tools, there are certain KPIs to monitor to see whether corporates are productive. Last but not least, collaborations. There are different sides to collaboration, how they collaborate with their stakeholders, their customers, their other employees in their teams, maybe the competitors sometimes, how they can collaborate with each other are things that I will talk in this presentation. So let's first take corporate attitudes and practices. I would like to talk about the current situation. I would focus on Sri Lanka at large, Colombo as a focus, and corporate attitudes and practices, what kind of attitudes and practices we have. And then I would talk about the challenges and how we can improve as corporates. What I want from this presentation is our professionals, like you guys, doctors, to see what corporates are doing well and sometimes not so well. And this will hopefully help you all to improve attitudes and practices and adapt certain learnings from the corporate sector. So as of now, the corporate sector attitudes and practices. Let me be very honest, but yet perspective on this. My perspective on this is corporate attitudes and practices in Sri Lanka varies a lot. Certain organizations which have very good practices and attitudes are sometimes improving using different methods, different tools that they use to improve corporate attitudes. Human resource management, HRM, human resource management, is a method and a functionality we have to improve the attitudes of corporates and certain practices. But do HR managers or HR management focusing on attitudes and practices in a strategic way? That is the question. Because when strategy is connected to operations, there's a bigger chance that we operate in a way that is strategic and forward thinking. So the problem and the concern with HRM, human resource management, is whether attitudes and practices are strategically in line or not. Yes, on vision boards, on company vision statements, these attitudes and practices are mentioned. Yes, at morning meetings on a Monday, definitely the HRM might be talking about attitudes and practices. But is it connected to day in and day out practices of corporate employees? That is where the difference happen. That is where the change is probably required to improve. In a global perspective, companies such as Apple Inc., companies such as Google, they practice these corporate attitudes and practices and make sure that their employees are surrounded, are supported by these attitudes and practices. Having work-life balance, yet being able to perform at an optimum when they're asked to work for the company. Those are attitudes that can really improve corporates in Sri Lanka. Yes, some organizations have this. Some organizations have a lot of support for their corporates. But let me question you to think, what is the percentage? Do every company have this kind of support? And practices. How can these attitudes and practices go down to the lowest or the highest employee of the company? I would say the human resource management or HR team will have a strong say to this. How they convey the message, how they use different signs, different ways to communicate attitudes and practices to employees are very crucial. Sometimes you might see IT companies. IT companies often tend to encourage work-life balance, often because they realize that they're often in front of a computer. They would encourage their employees to go out, socialize, have a wind down session. But can that be practically done all the time? How it will be supported, how that mindset is supported throughout a company? That is the question, that is the concern, and that is where, again, HR and line management of those employees will have to work together. To make this successful, to communicate and transfer that attitude and practice, line managers and human resource will often have to work together closely and will have to set aside certain practices to help those corporates to practice those day in, day out, weekly, monthly, and year throughout. Because in the corporate sector, there are certain periods that the work pressure will hit them more. For example, the financial year end. For example, if there's an audit coming up, there's a strong difference in the corporate mindset and how they are pressurized. Let's take the example of work-life balance. If HRM, if the human resource management communicate this need for work-life balance to corporate employees, unless line managers take that up seriously and unless line managers promote that to companies, they will not be able to execute this practically, especially during pressurized periods of the year. So the practice is not just in one department, but also a responsibility of the line management and the functional heads also. Okay, so what are the challenges? Definitely the ways our corporate sector had been built, attitudes and society, and how we think about certain practices. For example, when it comes to corporate attitudes, there's a certain challenge when it comes to gender-biased decisions sometimes we'll have to take. Certain limitations the female gender might sometimes have, especially with their family commitments. So if the human resource management and the line management has certain agreements and support system to support all genders equally, or to support male and female both to perform in the same way in the corporate sector, the productivity will definitely improve. That is where attitudes and practices should be again communicated and practiced at both ends, not just the human resource or the strategic top of the company, but also in their functional teams. This communication and adaptation has to happen at both ends. Again, the society plays a big role. For example, no matter how much the organization focus on certain attitudes and practices, if their families are not having the mindset to support, again, let me take the example of gender biased equality, whether genders are treated equally. Unless the families are also supporting the cause, it will not be practical for corporates to execute this. So certain practices of companies are sometimes they invite the family members also to certain functions, certain events of the year. Then family members understand the culture and how they are treated in their companies. For example, it could be the year-end party or the Christmas family get-together. So that's an opportunity for the corporates to communicate the corporate attitudes and practices to their family and to the society that they live in, so that the support system at home will help the corporates to practice and have better attitudes in the corporate sector. When the families know that the companies are expecting this kind of equality of functionality or certain attitudes at the company, they will be finding it easier to support the corporate employee. Let me take an example. If a wife is working at an IT company and expected sometimes to work very late, unless the husband and the children knows that the company is expecting the employee to work late and work longer, maybe transport is given, maybe extra food is given. Unless the family knows this, it will not be helped enough by the family. So communication from HR to the functional heads, to the employee, and also to the society that they're living in are very important. The communication should not break. That is when corporate attitudes and practices can be done effectively. Also, there are problems when it comes to changing practices and attitudes in the corporate sector. Yes, in Sri Lanka, often, yes, we have strong KPIs and tend to have a mindset to achieve objectives. But even in certain Colombo organizations, corporate organizations, we do have a lot of slack. That is the truth, because we cannot often compare ourselves with certain other markets in the world, because how we indulge work is different. How we enjoy work is different compared to certain other foreign markets. Because in certain markets, when they go to their corporate sector employment, they see it as a way of enjoying life. They see it as a way of getting to know people, contributing to the society. But in Sri Lanka, often corporate sector is taken only as a job, only as a way of earning money. But when we show the larger purpose of doing a job, when we show how the job you're doing is important to the society, and when we show, especially through the HR, that having right practices within peers, having right practices within your stakeholders, having a friendly and a professional environment that you can enjoy your life while you do a job, it will help corporates to do better. So attitudes and practices help a lot. to change attitudes in the Sri Lankan context, there's a challenge. That is the clash between the thoughts in the community and the organizational thoughts that we need to enforce. Sometimes, especially when I take back the same example of gender equality, certain practices in the society will not sometimes help companies to change also. Since change in the society is also required, companies will sometimes have to spend more time to communicate the message of change of attitudes and practices. Let me go further. Let me focus on achieving organizational goals. I will concentrate about how corporates are focusing on achieving organizational goals. Definitely, corporates are focused more on profits than community-based objectives. Corporates will have certain sustainable and long-term requirements financially and sometimes non-financially. And the responsibility we carry on profits and sustainability and growth in long run is different. Unless it's a service-oriented charity organization, the corporates focus a lot on profits. So the weight of profits are there from the minor employee to the chief executive officer, from the person who does the clerical work, or to the person who's actually into certain minor activities, to the person who's on top as the chief executive officer. They have to often bear the weight and the responsibility of profits. So when a corporate employee does a job, it's very important that they think about the profits, that they think about the objectives of the organization. Do employees often know the objectives? That is a question. How do we communicate this? How could we communicate objectives of the organization to all the employees? As I had seen, yes, the line managers play a pivotal role in passing this organizational objective. But not just that. Certain social media content that we see for the organization, certain above-the-line advertising that is there for public, certain events that we do for the organization will definitely communicate the organizational goals to the employees. And also certain CSR events, certain community-based social responsibilities that will show certain objectives of the organization. So it's not just done by the functional heads, but also the people who are involved, the place, certain strategies such as advertising, marketing, certain promotional events will also help to understand the objectives of the organization. So corporates who really know the objectives of the organization will work with a better focus, will work with the mindset of achieving their organizational growth. Leadership skills give an advantage because leaders in the organization will give them the advantage of learning more about objectives of the organization. If the leadership is very strong on their communication, if the leadership gives a strong impression as to how companies can grow, how employees can grow, it will give them the opportunity to function better. So leadership makes a very different support, gives a very different support to employees to grow. The body language. Body language of functional heads, body language of chief executive officers. All of them will help the employees to understand the objective and focus of the organization. Let me talk about delegation, empowering, and scaling up. What is delegation? Delegation is where we assign certain tasks to others. But at the same time, we need to make sure the responsibility and the accountability does not change. And we use empowering. We use empowering as a tool to make those employees who got the task to do that job better. And scaling up. What is scaling up? To improve the organization and how they function, we scale up by hiring more employees. We scale up by engaging more employees to the task. So let me first focus about delegation to achieve corporate goals. Of course, a line manager or a functional head can focus on one or two employees and get the job done. But what if that line manager get others also to work on it? What if those line managers empower others also to learn that job and do that task? It will take some time, but definitely by educating other members, by educating other employees, it will help them to empower others also to know the task. And not just one or two employees, others will also start doing that task. It will take some time, but very importantly, when we have more employees, it will help people to grow into that role. So to do that, first and foremost, training is important. It can be personal training to some of the employees. It will be group training sometimes. But very importantly, training will take time. Training will not immediately help them to grow leaders, but investing that time to grow new leaders, investing that time for them to delegate and have new members to do that role will help the organization to delegate and empower others. Empowering does not mean that you just give the authority, but also empowering also means that you give credibility. Let's say you assign a new member to do a role. We should appreciate them. We should empower them by giving them more credibility. Rather than just giving the task to do, it's important that we give them authority to take actions. In the corporate sector, it's very important to do this. If not, without empowering, it's very hard to delegate. And scaling up. Unless we scale, you might have seen, for example, if you take a company that is growing, it's important that we scale up and hire new individuals, recruit individuals to scale up the business rather than the same set of people doing the same job for a long time. Unless this scaling up happens, organizational goals cannot be achieved. Scaling up helps them to achieve more targets. Let me get into strategic thinking in a corporate environment. I had focused on 5 elements of strategic thinking. First and foremost, you can see on the slide, it's important to set a vision what you want. It's important to set what is the vision and what you exactly want. Unless employees know this, unless all stakeholders know what their vision is, they cannot go on their mission to complete the vision of the organization. Then investing resources in a strategic program. Yes, you can invest on new recruits, you can invest financially, but unless it's strategic, you will not be able to manage your resources properly. Thirdly, focus on an identified opportunity. Okay, if we focus on the same opportunity that your competitors are also focusing on, it will not help to do better. Let me share one of the very important strategies corporates use. That is the blue ocean strategy. Blue ocean is compared to a red ocean. It's not full of fish. If it's a red ocean, it will be full of fish where you're competing with others. Okay, how does this strategy works? Let's take a chain of hotels in the city of Colombo maybe. Let's take maybe 40 years ago, maybe not many hotels in Colombo had international standard pools. Maybe just one or two hotels would have started it. If a corporate starts with a strategy like this and enter into a blue ocean, they will start having a competitive edge. So it's important in the corporate sector that the strategic thinking is aligned with a blue ocean strategy, where we focus on an identified opportunity rather than focusing on a thing that everyone else, all competitors are doing. So it's very important we figure out what is the identified opportunity as a company. Number 4 is to leverage a breakthrough market impact. There are certain breakthroughs that we can use to have an advantage. For example, as I took maybe 40 years ago in Colombo, not every hotel in the city limit had an international standard pool. So if that happens, if a hotel chain come up with a pool, if they came up 40 years ago, they would have opened up to certain amount of new customers to create a breakthrough. So it's important that you leverage, utilize, use that breakthrough to create a market impact. That is how companies leverage and grow, using a strategic vision, using strategic resources, using an identified opportunity strategically and leverage on it. Of course, the performance will pay you back when we have that focus in line. If you take the number 1 and go into the number 2 step and go into the 3rd step and go into the 4th step, of course, the 5th step of performance result will be there to pay you back. So this is why there are 5 elements of strategic thinking. Of course, to get the right rewards, there could be certain elements that you have to have in place. Maybe the way you do the marketing, maybe the way you do client services. But this number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and the number 5 steps should be in line for a corporate, for a company to perform and get results. Let me also think about productivity and the corporate mindset. How to increase your business productivity? There are certain tools that you can do. Technology is very useful. In companies, often we see tools such as mobile apps given to company employees to make sure that their productivity is monitored. Often certain result-oriented, certain KPIs-oriented, certain reports are there for them to monitor and assess, analyze their productivity. Definitely, the mobile phone is very useful in so many companies. The corporate system, the CRM, or the system where all our performance is included, is there to our fingertips. And also, where new ideas are generated. It's very important new ideas are generated to improve productivity. If we stagnate at the same place, if we do not come up with innovation to improve productivity, corporates will stagnate. And the global perspective. It's very important that we learn from other practices. Other best practices should be cultivated in our corporate sector. And of course, there are certain chains, certain settings that we have to have, certain systems that we have to enforce and practice day in, day out to make sure productivity is enforced. For example, certain KPIs that we have, for example, if it's a sales company, they would check what's the number of sales interviews that their sales force had done with their customers. So that is a system of monitoring. For example, when we take customer service in the corporate sector, there are certain reviews, such as how many bad complaints are there, how many negative complaints are there. And of course, no matter what, no matter how much we base ourselves on systems, our brain, our human thinking capacity is very important. As long as we are adapting using human perspective, corporates can do better. Even though there is artificial intelligence, still the human perspective is very important. The brain and how we utilize our brain capacity, how we use our experience and adapt that to grow as companies are very, very important. Then finally, I would like to talk about note taking. Taking notes is very important when it comes to productivity. Corporate sector believes in following up. Corporate sector works a lot with certain factors such as note-taking, virtually sometimes the good old notebook, but these are very important for corporates to perform better, to improve productivity. To-do list are very important for a corporate to engage and complete their work on time. It can be virtual system that they are engaged with. Maybe it's a certain mobile platform that they are using, or it can be the good old notebook that they are using. But it's very important that they complete task and be task oriented. So the corporate sector to do well, it's very, very important to use some of these techniques to manage and grow. Collaborations in the corporate sector. Let me talk about collaborations. Do you think competitors work together in the corporate sector? I'm sure some of you might think, no, competitors do not work together most of the time. But the truth is, even competitors can work together. Collaborations happen sometimes between corporates who are competing even. There are certain entities that focus on certain aspects of the industry. For example, if it's a wealth management organization, certain competitors might have a certain specialty. For example, certain wealth management organizations will focus on long-term investments, and certain other organizations will focus on retirement funds, will focus on health covers. So they can work together even though they have the same product within themselves. There are certain opportunities that they share, referrals, customers. They work with certain cross-selling opportunities. Of course, collaborations are very important within the organization. Teamwork, of course, is a key success factor. Teamwork is very much concentrated and focused for corporates to win. You often would see team managers focus on teamwork. Sometimes in the professional sector, it can be lawyers, medical corporates, there is a bit of leverage to work by yourself sometimes. But in the corporate sector, that opportunity to work by yourself is very limited because we always have to engage in a team. It can be hierarchy, it can be different stakeholders, but we always have to report and work with that teamwork. Also, inspiration and trust. How we inspire each other to grow is very important. So when you see corporate employees, you might see certain differences. They are driven by inspiration. They need that motivation. Sometimes they are not the best when it comes to working by themselves, because corporate sector depends on that teamwork, inspiration, trust, exchange, and different support we have with different stakeholders. So collaborations is a slightly different activity for corporates. Corporates have a different perspective on this. Corporates rely on collaborations much more than certain professions. Why we all need wealth management? Now, I was talking about certain behaviors, certain patterns, certain ways of life for corporates. But at the end, we all need to make sure we manage our wealth. We all need to make sure that we engage on wealth creation. Let me talk about wealth creation. No matter how corporates build their life, no matter how professionals build their life, at the end of the day, they have to face certain basic needs of their life. For example, we all get sick. We all have to maintain health. We all need to manage our money, our cash flows, our long-term, mid-term, short-term investments. We all have to one day look into retirement. We all have families. We all have children to support. With all that similarities, all those similarities, corporates or professionals will often have these challenges to face at the end. We have life insurance requirements, we have corporate requirements, associational requirements. So with all these requirements, it's important that we analyze the need. And everyone has a need, I believe. Everyone will have to go back to wealth management and face these needs. We'll all have to face these problems that we face in our lives. Yes, professionals and corporates will often have different perspective, different patterns of life. But at the end of the day, we both categories will have to face life in general. So I believe as a financial advisor, it's important that we understand the need and address these problems. We address these requirements. When I see an individual, a corporate or a professional coming to me to get investment or retirement plan, I make sure that I focus on the need of the person. In the same way, when you see your patient sometimes, maybe your friends, family who are into the corporate sector, we have to understand their needs are also sometimes changed because they're a professional or because they're a corporate. For example, corporates will have certain limitations. Sometimes companies do support them with their health covers. For them to take care of their health expenses, companies will support them as long as they're a corporate employee. But when they're outside, when they're out of that organization, they might not have finances to take care of their health requirements. They might struggle. But often as professionals, there would be certain support given throughout your professional life. I understand professionals often have a basic health cover. Professionals will often have support from their organizations. But when it comes to corporates, they tend to change their organization more often. The average lifetime they spend in a company will not be long as how long they are with a government hospital chain maybe, or with a private practice. It'll be often smaller, it'll be often shorter than most of the professionals. So their requirements change very often. Their families will have to adapt according to the corporate sector role that they are playing. So what I want to emphasize here is, as doctors, often you would see a difference when it comes to corporates. Corporates tend to change their jobs. They tend to change their organizations they work. So their health requirements, their investment requirements will vary a lot sometimes. When you see a patient who had come after a job change or something, maybe after a change of organizations they were working, if that change is very different to what they were in previously, you would see that patient might be having a very different lifestyle compared to the first time you met that patient a few years ago. So corporates go through a lot of changes sustainability and that stability is different. Could be very dynamic. Sometimes if they're performing well in the corporate sector, yes, of course, the story would be much different. But for most of the corporates, that stability is very different to professionals. They have to hustle at different opportunities. They have to manage with different companies. So as a financial advisor, I always encourage, even to my teammates who are in my company, in my team, to have a lot of transparency, have open conversations with the corporate sector employees, and make sure that we open up and talk honestly with integrity, and make sure we do an education-based selling. Because wealth management varies a lot according to their requirement. Wealth management varies a lot according to the real situation of their life. Corporates often go through different changes. 15 years ago, I asked a very experienced doctor as to why you became a doctor. The answer he gave was stability. The answer he gave is, no matter where I go, I will have practice. I was doing my advanced level at that time in the biology stream, but I really felt that difference when I entered the corporate sector. I know, even for professionals, there are challenges, there are different phases of their growth. But compared to corporates who tend to change jobs, maybe sometimes in very few years, they had to change sometimes because of the organizational issues sometimes. So their wealth management requirements, their wealth management cycles also change along with it. So it's important as a financial advisor to look into their personal life and their requirements, whether their health had changed, whether their investment requirements, capacity, whether their retirement plans had changed. So even for professionals, it will change in a very different way. Sometimes your objectives will improve, your objectives will increase, but it's important as a financial advisor that I talk and understand the changes which had happened gradually or very fast. Why long-term investments? I like to introduce long-term investments to you. Now, when it comes to long-term investments, what are these long-term investments? Often, we will have short-term gains in stock exchange. Sometimes, when it comes to certain companies, you will have long-term gains. I'm sure some of you are already investing. Some of you are already into these products. I'm into insurance. So we do have long-term investments also, where we focus on long-term objectives. Corporates in the long run, they often do not have a pension. They don't have a retirement. They have to create their retirement fund. If not, even professionals, the needs do not finish. Needs tend to increase, even though you might be focusing on your retirement fund. You might even sometimes feel, okay, fine, I want to improve my retirement fund. So those kind of investments are at least 15 years or more, or at least sometimes 10 years more to do best. Because most of these long-term investments are reinvested again with certain long-term financial tools such as treasury bonds, treasury bills. That is why when you look at certain unit trust, certain insurance investments, we often see those term as at least 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, because those reinvestments are happening often in long-term products, such as life insurance funds, which are often 20, 15 years. Often it could be treasury bills and bonds. That is the reason. Let me go into this chart. You will see three lines. First, you will see the premium line, where you see the premium is consistent. I had taken 20 years as an investment plan, whereas every year I had just taken a minimal cost of 5 lakhs per 5 years. So in general, it's just 1 lakh per year. That commitment had not changed for 20 years. So there are certain products in wealth management where you are committed just to pay a certain amount yearly. You can continue it for a certain amount of time, X amount of time. Let's say it's for 20 years. And the investment, you would see the investment line, the third line, which is marked by a gray line. You would see the investment growth for the first 5 years is only 2 lakhs, 200,000 rupees. Then 600,000 by the end of 10 years. By the end of 15 years, it's almost at 1.4 million. But after completion of 20 years, in this example, it's 3 million. So why? Because it takes time for long-term investments to give a sufficient return. At the same time, especially in the health insurance industry, you can take certain other benefits also, like a hospital cover, which is sufficient to use globally in any country outside. Certain patients will come to you and say, okay, I had got this sickness. If I have to treat myself outside the country, what can I do? Even if I have to go through certain treatments outside the hospital, I need pharmacy benefits, I need certain cash flows, especially when they have a critical illness. There are other non-hospitalization requirements. It could be because they would lose their income, because they will not be able to live their life as usual if they get a heart attack or something. Sometimes they might not be able to live their life as usual. They will need compensation. So in certain long-term investments like this, there are benefits which are catered to take care of those long-term risks also. So as I was saying, corporates have a lot of different issues, such as their dynamic life. They want to make sure that they have a lot of benefits in their health insurance, in their health covers. They want to make sure that they have certain benefits, such as fast service. They have 24 hours customer service, that if they have to go outside the country, that they need to make sure that their benefits are covered outside the country also. They don't want to have limits in their investments. They want to make sure that they have easy access to their investment funds. So corporates as well as professionals, I know, will find these benefits very useful. I would slightly brief you about the health insurance of Softlogic Life, where we have optical, dental, body checkups, pharmacy, and maternity, and have limits that are larger than any other competitor. Why do individuals have corporate health covers? You might see your patients sometimes having corporate health insurance, often because it's given by the company. It's often because when a company takes over a health cover, they can demand for better client relationships, faster claims, and they can even pay using a credit period. And the amount of benefits can be customized. And also, price matching can be done. Certain online tools will be there. But at the same time, individual covers, individual investment covers, and individual health covers are different to corporate covers. Individual covers will have more ability to change, adapt, and customize according to the individual. So these two are giving different products and will be catering to different requirements of individuals and companies. There are trigger words when people want to make sure that they have to take care of their financial and health needs in future. They will go for investments. They will go for retirement plans when they want to plan their retirement. Retirement is a very trendy topic in Sri Lanka often now, because they're more concerned about their financial future, especially after certain economic crisis we had. We employees, corporate employees, professionals had got more focused on planning their future requirements and facing emergencies in future. Of course, children and future requirements are very much often a reason that trigger them to go for investments. Yes, tax-free investments. Tax cuts had been very much talked about in recent years. So there are wealth plans, wealth management tools which are tax-free at maturity. So corporate employees and professionals both tend to go for these because of tax-free nature at maturity. Let's connect more. Would love to talk to you guys. Would love to connect with you all, support you individually if required. This is my contact number, 0710-864480. And I work for Softlogic Life Insurance as a financial advisor, as an assistant business manager. And this topic of corporate employees and how corporates do wealth management is a very much a larger topic. But within this hour, I am very happy to share my perspective as to how corporates behave, as to how corporates work with their organizational objectives. And I hope this presentation helped you guys to adapt some of the learnings and help to understand your stakeholders, such as patients, family, peers, and help their lives also to grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dilan. Before winding up, we have one question from one of our viewers. The question is, since we all take insurance to mitigate risk, how is it possible to classify as long-term investment? Could you please clarify?
Okay, so insurance are two types. One is shorter, where often between 1 year to maybe 2-3 years. But there are investments which are long-term, which often go hand in hand with long-term investments. It's coupled up together. Whereas your commitment you do annually, you're also focused on an investment fund, where there is an investment fund and a health cover both. So insurance, we often say it's for health insurance, but insurance is larger than that. But at the same time, in Sri Lanka and in Asian countries, we couple it up with a wealth planning tool, because at the end of the day, after spending for 1 year or 3 years or 20 years, Sri Lankans and Asian market often likes to see what's the financial return. So there are different plans we can cater for them, starting up from 3-year payment, going up until 40-year payment even. So we make sure we customize according to the person, because wealth management is something corporates and professionals both utilize to make sure that they are managing their wealth in the long run, short term, and also mid-term. I have a very strong portfolio of doctors. I know doctors are very interested on wealth management. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. And there's another question. And what about inflation matching with long-term investments?
Very good question. Now, there are two types of wealth management tools. One caters to the inflation, and the second time does not cater to the inflation. The one that cater to inflation, let's say on study text, we used to say when we learned wealth management, the inflation is only about 10%. But we saw in the last few years, inflation was not 10%. But in the longer run, when it averages out, we can still assume the inflation could be around 5 to 10%. In the long run, maybe 10, 15 years or 20 years. Hopefully, our economy will not crash. But if not, the inflation would stay around 5 to 10% on study text. So when inflation happens on 5 to 10%, there is an investment plan that also increases the premium every year. So that will make sure that the returns are also increased. That is the first type. The second type is where the commitment is consistent. Even now, the face value of the commitment can be 100,000 a year. Even after 20 years, the face value is the same. So at that time, compared to the face value, you might think, okay, I'm paying still 100,000. it will not be felt large in 20 years. That is where the premium is not increasing. Premium is the same. So if somebody wants to counter inflation, there's a different product. If someone wants to say, no, I don't want to counter now. For now, I will just commit this amount, maybe, $500,000 a year, whatever they want to customize. So there are two needs. Some customers don't want to counter inflation, especially because they don't know what's the inflation would be in Sri Lanka, especially in the long run. But if you want to counter, there are other customized products where we can go for an escalated premium. The premium will every year increase according to the requirement, and also the investment return will also increase. So that is the method we have to counter, especially in insurance.
I think that's all for the questions, and we can wind up this session. And let me thank Mr. Dilan Fonseka for that very interesting and very informative lecture. And of course, it is very novel to us, and of course, it is very important to us. So let me thank Mr. Dilan Fonseka for coming here today and joining us today. Thank you so much to the viewers for attending and listening to us. So see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.